interesting, but I'm glad to see so much discussion. Maybe let's connect these conversations back to the project. How did that make you think of this? And then one of the last ones, which I hope doesn't happen very often, but thinking about feuds and conflict. So sometimes group members have personality differences, different beliefs about how the project should go. Maybe it has nothing to do with the task, but either way, it's getting in the way of the project or the group functioning together. And it could be that each side's viewpoint may need to be heard before people can refocus, especially if it was something awkward or a weird type of argument that happened. What else could you say or do? Aaron?
Yeah, kind of just building on that last point you said about just each side's viewpoint needing to be heard. I was in a position where our role in this sort of situation was more to just be there to facilitate the conversation and make sure that each voice was heard and that they felt like they were heard and they like in a good way, I'll just say. And it's super difficult, but I found that when both people leave at least feeling like they've communicated what they intended to originally, they're able to like move past the situation.
Beautiful. And I'm so curious, if you don't mind sharing, like, was there something that you did to mediate or something you thought was helpful to make both sides feel like they were being heard? Like something you said or the way that you even like set it up?
The way that it was set up was like a restorative justice circle, and like that method. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with that. Which it was a while ago, but I'm pretty sure, like I said, that kind of just highlights the fact that you get not just those two members involved, but you get the entire group involved and everyone who's affected by the dispute or the argument or whatever the conflict is, and they all get to voice their opinions. And the people who weren't necessarily in the conflict get to say like how it made them feel and what they would like hope from their members going forward.
That's amazing. It feels like almost therapeutic, where you're giving people the chance to like feel heard, supported, kind of go at the root instead of just saying like, oh, get over it, like push past it, we'll just focus on the project. It's almost like reminding us that we're human, and for this to work or be appropriate, kind of like letting the group heal in and of itself. Shiv.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like from a ULA perspective, I think it's also sometimes okay to realize that some things are like out of your hands and that like you're also a student and it's completely okay to tell the professor whose class it is that it might be better for them to step in, because I think sometimes like as ULAs we feel like we should handle everything in the classroom to lessen the burden on the professor. But I also think some things are better handled by the professor rather than another student, because I feel like sometimes the power dynamic between students can be a little tricky if it's like a ULA trying to step in, and I think it's completely okay to like take a step back and let someone else handle it.
Absolutely. And especially because you're also a person, right? Like you as a student, if it's uncomfortable for you, or if you're just not sure how to do it in the best way, hopefully your professor or the instructor for the class will have some advice, or at least like they would be aware of what's going on so that maybe you could even do it together. Absolutely. Annette, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm just gonna agree with Shiv. Like, I feel like kind of going in between students is not really good, because I feel like it might seem like you're trying to play favorites or something, or if you're like friends with a student or something. And I feel like that's only gonna exacerbate the problem. So I guess like either getting like an outside person and like, to depending on what type of like problem it is, or having the teacher kind of take a look at it would probably be a better idea.
This almost reminds me of like all the benefits of being a ULA. Like you can liaise between the professor and the student, or you can like really be able to take the perspective of what it may be like to be a student in the classroom, or like you even just see it through a different lens. In some cases, like it's such a helpful thing, right? You can help design the class, you can be supportive of the instructor, the professor, like you were talking about, Shiv. But then you're right, Annette, like it can make it feel like maybe the way that you say something or how you approach a situation, because you are a peer, may make the students feel like you're quote unquote playing favorites, or you may even like make them feel even more agitated or get more defensive without even meaning to, right? So it's nice to have kind of the person who's leading the class, even like, you know, there's a little bit of a power differential, and they could use that to help settle the dust with something like a conflict in a group. Totally. Some of the examples that I like is what we practiced last week with like reflecting or trying to engage in really helpful discourse with other students. So like even just trying to understand yourself what they're saying. So like what you're saying is, or, oh, part of the issue that I'm noticing is, and seeing if you're getting it right. And maybe trying to like help remind students that it's not just about the conflict that they're struggling with, but the whole point of being in this small group is to work on this project or to learn in this smaller group setting. I can imagine if I were in a small group and this were happening to other students near me, you know, if we keep doing this, we're not going to be able to get our work done. And I have my job to go to. Like, can we maybe like share, see what's going on, have you talk about whatever the conflict is, but then like, let's focus on the task, because maybe that's a little bit less anxiety provoking or stressful than just like continuing to talk about whatever it is that your conflict is about. When after going through this, right, like, is there anything you notice about maybe the way that you would approach this differently as a ULA versus, you know, if you're a student in the group, like some things that may make it easier or even more difficult serving in that different role? Aaron.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the conflicts that really stood out to me and like how different I would handle it in these two roles was if there was a dominant voice in the group. I think that it's probably best to set clear like boundaries or clear understandings in the group very early on. And so if I was a student, I would probably say something early on. But as a ULA, I think that I'd be more inclined to let the students hopefully work it out, because I think that like it's something that you have to do, and a ULA or professor is not always going to be there to like mitigate that situation for you. But after a certain amount of time, I definitely would have to like step in.
So it almost sounds like you would take a developmental approach, right? Like provide the scaffolding, let people have the time and space to talk about whatever they need to talk about, get back on track, resolve a conflict, deal with group dynamics so that they can be productive and working together. Kind of a wait and see. But then if you notice it going on for too long, maybe what you would do as a student is like chime in, make suggestions, be more directive. But it sounds like as a ULA, you would almost like reflect the problem, like show them, hold up a mirror and say like, okay, this is what I'm noticing going on. And then giving them another chance to fix it or make progress without necessarily being as directive or intervening.
Definitely.
Awesome. So before we switch gears to the Bloom's taxonomy, does anyone, I heard you, Annette, describing some of the concepts of Bloom's taxonomy earlier. Has everyone heard of this? Has anyone ever heard of Bloom's taxonomy and the different types of knowledge? Adelaide, I see a thumbs up. Yep, Annette, Hennick, amazing. So hopefully this will be a little bit of a refresh, so kind of recalling some things that you already know. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply it I think many of you are coming up with exam questions for your class. So what we're gonna do is like, try to think about different levels of questions that you could use to help with exams for your instructors.